I'd like to call the October 24th, 2022 meeting of the Jackson Beach Planning Commission to order. May we have roll call, please?
David Dahl,
Yes.
Margaret Warren,
Yes.
Greg Sutton,
Here.
Colleen White,
Here.
Justin Lehrman,
Here.
Emily Stouffer,
Here.
Nicholas Andrews.
Here.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with just a little bit about how the meetings work. The Planning Commission meetings are quasi-judicial in nature. All decisions of the Commission will be based on competent, substantial evidence, including testimony provided in this meeting. Any person who is not an applicant or agent that wishes to speak will need to fill out a speaker's card located at the side table by the door and turn them into the clerk. Each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please refrain from speaking from the audience and applause or cheering. You can kind of do that up here. We ask that you not do it from the audience. And please silence your cell phones. With that, our first action item is approval of the minutes from September 26, 2022. Do we have any comments on those minutes, or do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second. All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Mr. Copley, do we have correspondence?
Only the email that I sent out earlier today with the attachments from the applicant. I think is the one that you forwarded.
Okay. And so that, does that mean that we don't need to kind of mention that as part of ex parte?
It came from us. I mean, some of you received it, some of you didn't, so it's probably good to disclose it.
Okay. Well, we'll do that when we get to that point. Is there any old business?
No old business.
Okay, new business.
Give you our director.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Heather Ireland, Planning and Development Director. I'm going to present to you the staff report for PC 2322, and then following the applicant's presentation, Mr. Popoli and I will be available for any questions you have. So PC 2322 is a rezoning application for property that's located at 201 Fifth Avenue North, which is the former location of what was called Beau's Coral Reef Bar. It was in operation for 55 years and closed in January of 2019. It is a non-conforming use that cannot be reestablished after it's considered abandoned for more than 6 months under the definitions of the Land Development Code. In addition to that, the property, and I didn't put it up here, it does not have ample parking for the use, and it is closer than 500 feet, around 450, to another drinking establishment, which is a proximity requirement in the code. So for these reasons, the owner has applied for a rezoning that would try to fix some of these issues that they've got with the property. The new owner wants to open a new drinking establishment at the location, but also include a small component of retail and office tenant spaces to the property, which would categorize it as a mixed-use building or a shopping center. The building would remain on site with limited outside changes, the changes primarily happening in the interior. And again, they are requesting to rezone this to redevelopment district or RD. So just some details on the project, and then I'll provide a map, a location map, and a site plan. Again, they do plan to retain the building on site. There would be what's being proposed approximately 6,700 square feet of drinking establishment to include both the inside and the outdoor deck area that's existing, 250 square feet of a separate retail space, and 200 square feet of a separate office space. Drinking establishment, they're proposing as a permitted use as opposed to a conditional use, which is how it is in all of our other commercial zoning districts. And they are requesting relief from the 500-foot proximity rule, which is bar to bar. And they're proposing that parking will be provided through a combination of on-site parking, off-site parking agreements with adjacent properties, should they be able to find that as an option, and payment in lieu of, or some combination of the three. So this is the property location. Again, it's the northwest corner of North 2nd Street and Fifth Avenue North. You've probably driven by it. And the proposed site plan for the project is proposing around 5,200 square feet of indoor bar with a 1,500 square foot outdoor bar area, which is an existing deck that's in the rear, 200 square feet of office space, 250 square feet, the office back here, 250 square feet of retail, and there are 7 existing on-site parking spaces. However, they are gravel, and the applicant is proposing to pave the one spot at the south end to comply with ADA requirements. Their total parking requirement is 14 spaces, so they will have to find, if you will, those 7 spaces elsewhere through one of those methods I mentioned earlier, as parking variances for numerical parking aren't allowed in this zoning district.
Just real quick, Ms. Arlen.
Yes, sir.
Does that deck exist today?
Yes, yes, it does.
Could you go back to the prior picture then, before this? Okay,
Yeah, it's right around here.
there.
It's about 1,500 square feet or so.
Thanks.
Yes, sir, it is there. So staff's analysis is that it would serve to eliminate what we consider a blighted property in the commercial downtown core, provide a mix of commercial uses, and provide for the reactivation of a site that has been vacant for over 3 years, about 3.5. Again, it was previously a drinking establishment for 55 years until it closed in 2019. And we don't consider the uses to be inconsistent with the previous use, surrounding properties, or any adjacent uses, and we don't find it to be in conflict with any relevant portions of the comprehensive plan or the land development code. I'm going to skip ahead real quick and then come back to this. The Community Redevelopment Agency reviewed the application at their regular meeting today at 3 o'clock, and they did agree with staff's analysis that the project is consistent with the downtown redevelopment plan. And they did recommend approval of the rezoning request with all of the suggested staff conditions that I'm going to circle back to, except for number 6, and I'm going to cover all of those individually. And with the addition that the recommendation, that the existing gravel parking be paved. So I want to cover with you just some, again, suggested recommendations, conditions that staff thought you might want to consider for this project, should the Planning Commission move to approve this application. So the first one is, because there's been a lot of discussion about drinking establishments in the downtown, and just to maintain consistency with the rest of the city and the commercial zoning districts, to make a drinking establishment on this property a conditional use as opposed to a permitted use, so that way it's consistent with all other commercial properties. The second one, again, just a suggestion that the minimum square footage for the office and retail tenant spaces are slightly larger than what's being proposed, a minimum of 500 square feet. Number 3, parking. The third suggestion, parking shall be provided prior to any certificates of use being issued for any of the uses on the property. Number 4 suggestion is no internal access between uses and no shared bathroom facilities, which I did confirm. The second half of that is a requirement of the Florida Building Code that they have to have separate bathroom facilities. And I confirmed that again with the building official today. Number 5, that they would provide 1 paved ADA parking space in compliance with the Land Development Code as they've shown on their site plan. And number 6, final suggested condition or recommendation from staff is the consideration of removal of all or maybe a portion of the outdoor bar area in the rear to be replaced with additional on-site parking to support the project. So those are, again, staff recommendations for you to consider. Madam Chair, I can either take questions now or we can do it after the applicant has an opportunity to add any additional information they want to.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay,
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Does any board member have ex parte communication to mention? Well, I'll begin. I received a phone call from Scott McAllister on the 14th of October and received an email on the 22nd, which was then shared with the rest of the commissioners.
I also received a phone call.
I also received a phone call and an email.
I've received messages, phone call messages, and an email from the applicant.
Well, most of my business in this forum comes through my business email address. and I've been on leave for 2 days, so I haven't seen any yet.
I received the email that was forwarded.
Thank you, everyone. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in and give any presentation?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address.
Scott McAllister, 1941 Beach Avenue, Atlantic Beach, Florida, 22233. Hi. I have some copies of, pass it out.
You can hand it
That was just a copy of the same email that I sent. Dave, I think you're the only one that didn't receive the email. Okay. So I thought I had the right email address.
It was down mail. I wasn't scanning that account last year.
Okay. That might have been what it was. So on the front, it shows some photos of another project that we did. And that was a 1929 Standard Oil Station that we renovated and transitioned into kind of other pictures attached to that package. Yeah, that was a fun project. I kind of wanted to attach that so you guys can just sort of see some of the vision that we would like to see happen to the building at 201 Fifth Avenue. So it's kind of such a long story. It's been such a long journey since all this took place. So I was supposed to open in March 2020, and we had wanted to do. We were supposed to open prior to that and had some approved building plans to do a cosmetic interior renovation. A couple successful inspections. During that time, Public Works right thereafter stopped and requested that we build a dumpster corral. So we really delayed our project since we had already gone through the plans. It set us back about 7 months, which kind of put our target date for March 2020. We kind of must have won the lottery on that one. So, of course, the pandemic hit in March 2020, and I had to shut down my other businesses and lay off 100 people that I had working for me for years, kind of get them set up and prepared the best that I could under the circumstances. And through all that organizing, of course, all of the places were shut down, so this location sat until we kind of addressed everything that was going on and could loop back around again. Shortly after that, about 3 months or so into the pandemic, I ended up becoming ill, not through COVID, through, I mentioned in an email in the letter that's attached to that attitude. It was, the whole thing was quite the journey. Definitely feel blessed and thankful to be here with you today. So with those delays, as soon as I had been able to fully get my feet back on the ground, I was in and out of the hospital. They made calls and checked in with Duval permitting on some stuff we had in motion, and everyone said through the COVID mandate permit extension that the permits were automatically extended, and I didn't check with Jacksonville Beach until further down the road. At that point, when I had reached out to Jacksonville Beach about it, we were just a few days piece of paper requesting a permit extension. And then so immediately went down very shortly after and spoke with Heather and Christian, who've been amazing, very, very helpful in guiding me through the process. Been kind of a long process through buying the property. We also acquired a liquor license that was attached to the property. So I had to work through getting extensions of escrow and through an attorney that was helping me navigate getting that set, and then we navigated the rezoning process, which is where the application came from. At this point, kind of, this project is, it's important to me. I didn't want to give up, especially everything that's happened. I just needed to keep pushing forward motion, and we're hoping to take it all the way through, and kind of some of the things in relation to the project specifically is, of course, the outside, we would like to beautify that structure. We have a passion for architecture and, making a nice place inside and out. And with this one, because we have one of the 10 for COP liquor license, Heather and I spoke about it quite a bit, about that since we needed to put it in place that we would have to have the rezoning as drinking establishment rezoning, even though we will have a food component involved in what we're doing. So is there any questions I can answer?
Questions for the applicant?
Can't resist, that was quite a story. Did you keep a log, I'm sure you did, some kind of a log about all the hurdles you had to jump through and what you had to do and what the points of contact were? Because that's a lot of acting you just talked about.
Just been a journey.
Yeah.
We ended up through it. We had to take out 2 disaster relief loans because I have a mortgage to pay. So we're paying that through, and that was what I spoke to the RCA board about the deck, and it kind of, you're at the beach and you're eating, you're drinking, you like to be outside in the sunshine a little bit. The deck was an important part of what we were doing to be able to make back, revenues to hopefully project, 7 to 10 year repayment program on the disaster loans from the project itself. And we looked at it from a parking standpoint, and when we built the dumpster corral, when we first initiated the project, where it's situated on the lot, it's kind of a specific location. There's not a very logical place elsewhere to put it. But now with where it is, kind of having that egress in and out for parking and getting around, it's right in the way. It would have to be demolished and moved, and I'm not sure where we would move it. Plus it costs $40,000 to build, so it would be, I wouldn't really want to rebuild that. So it's kind of speaking with them. Another benefit is I feel like we were lucky with the placement of the deck itself. It's all 4 corners are surrounded by other commercial to kind of keep it, away from any, any potential noise complaints. I know Heather mentioned that it does. See what else I can. And another request that we had is the office and retail side of it. I'm sure you can tell is not very logically sized at 200 and 250 square feet. And the purpose of doing the mixed use property was to help with parking requirements, because we knew we had to meet those, and we were concerned it could be space purchase situation, which I hope it may not be, I hope it's not the case, but I think that I said it was 25,000 parking spot. So that was sort of the strategy of the approach that we did with the retail and the office. I know there's some concerns on sizing to make sure that we meet the needed building codes and other things that we need to make sure that those two uses are adequate with the square footage that they needed. The interior of the building, since we were supposed to open back in March 2020, is pretty much complete. We were ready to go at that time frame, and there's walls and things that make it pretty difficult to accommodate that square foot amount. So if it's possible, my thought was to make sure we meet the square footage that was necessary or that the building department needed. We could possibly work with the building department to shift in different ways, the square block boxes or the blocks of how that use would be, the perimeter of that use, without having to be necessarily stuck with 500 square feet per space. I felt like I didn't explain that very well. Did that make sense?
I heard you're not willing to do 500.
Yeah, less is better. If it's something that is everyone feels is absolutely necessary, we can continue to forward motion accommodate that side, but it would be challenging to get that square footage. And what would help is, if maybe one would be smaller than the other one, to be able to divide up the necessary square footage. So that was the other request, and if it's an option on the bathroom side, shared bathrooms would be a big help with the space itself to try to put I guess the site plan's not up there, but to put bathrooms to move all the way to each use would be difficult to run the plumbing. But again, everything's possible. It just is more expense to the project, which has been extremely costly up to this point.
Other questions for the
I know that was a lot.
So is there a reason you have to have retail and office space? Could you combine the two I get it, aside the parking, as far as what you were talking about when it comes to what's already been done inside and for ease of having to do plumbing and things, would you consider potentially just doing one retail space?
I think if my understanding is right, we needed 3 to be able to accommodate this decrease in parking.
So just to be clear, the forcing factor for this is parking.
Apartments, yeah.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, I think the first issue is parking, and that's why we're looking at 500 square feet of retail
Right.
and office. And then that leads to plumbing. And then there's still another question about neighbors and deck.
So what I was trying to get to was if you go down to just one space, larger, 500 like retail, obviously you're going to take it on parking, but potentially solves some of the issue with plumbing and things like that. But I don't know if it's that accurate or not.
Do you want me to address that?
Yes.
Please.
So the code requires, or defines, a shopping center as 3 or more uses. So that's how any commercial business gets that advantage of having a lower parking requirement. Because if it were just a bar, the requirement is 1 per 100 square feet. So that would be 70 spaces almost. But as a shopping center, 3 or more different separate uses, the parking requirement downtown is 1 to 500. It's a lot lower.
Okay,
So
so you're
mixed use project like this gets really an advantage of having mixed uses.
So you answered my question then, right?
The
If
three uses
there's
are
no
required.
way
I just wanna make
to.
sure
So by
that's
having
understood.
three uses, you would refer back to.
You refer back to-
single use, yeah.
Correct, it
Gotta
would be
hit
the
three.
retail plus the rest, or the
Gotcha.
bar.
Okay.
Do we have any further questions for the applicant?
Yeah, while Scott's up there, sir, what are we doing with, what's your plan for the deck out back?
In the sense of
You,
using,
you plan to build it as depicted, or leave it where it is, like it's
Right.
depicted?
right.
Because we've heard people talking about that deck for years.
Good things or bad things?
Well, I think there's a lot of good things that happen out on that deck, but I know there's been people in here talking about noise and beer cans over the fence, whatever.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we try to run a pretty tight ship on
I bet you do.
anybody trying to throw beer cans or anything. But how it's sort of located and where it is now, there's that strip center on three sides actually, in front of it, in the back and the side, and then our building is on the left-hand side. So luckily it's pretty away from, any residential. It's kind of consolidated in an area that, I'd be surprised if did they ever receive, this might not work in our favor, but did they ever receive noise complaints?
I'm not aware of
Okay.
from PDO.
And I think they were the last owner was, operating out of that location for about 50 years. So I think that I feel like it would be pretty simple to make sure that the noise and any disturbances or disruptions, stay pretty consolidated in there.
Other questions for the applicant?
Is there an actual bar on the deck, or is it just a place that you go and take your drink out?
There's a place where you just go outside, but I think that I'd have to look at it again. There was like a little, what looked like something about as long as that, where at one point I think the old folks that were there did serve out of it. Did. Yeah. But from like a permanent standpoint of plumbing and electric and coolers, not. So.
I have questions for Heather, but should I ask those now or should we wait?
Well, let's finish with the applicant.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So if you may, Ms. Ireland, at this point, you can be asking the questions the commissioners might have. Absolutely.
Speaking first, we don't have.
No, we do, but we're
Oh,
still,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
on the
yeah.
public
I got
hearing,
you.
so we're still.
Great. Question on number 6, on considering requiring the removal. So tell us why is that do they not have enough parking?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's just a recommendation for you guys to consider, and our thought was there is residential directly to the south, so our concerns were kind of twofold. One, potential noise complaints from the outdoor, since there's residential right there, and the other one being opening up maybe an opportunity for additional parking. They have about half of what they need based on the code requirement, so they've got to find those 7 spaces
How many is
elsewhere.
that add?
It adds, we're gonna add 3 additional parking spaces. Yeah. Good math.
The deck is on the north side of the building?
That's correct,
The
yes, sir.
residential you just cited is on the south, to
It's,
the
yeah,
south?
the Pierpoint
Doesn't mean there
condos
isn't
directly
noise,
to the
but-
south,
okay.
yeah. And I can't speak for noise complaints from the previous establishment, but again, I don't want to get too hung up on that since this would be a new drinking establishment, so. With new management, exactly.
It doesn't take out the parking. And where does the other parking come from? You said there's 7, that's 3. Where's the other 4?
7 on site, 1 would be paved to ADA space, the other 6 would be gravel as they exist today. They're not making them gravel, they are already gravel, and they are on site. The other 7, like I said before, would either have to be found off-site and meet the code requirements, so it's within 300 feet, and the uses have to have different times. So an office that closes at 5, or a bank, or something like that, where the parking could be shared. We have a parking agreement on Penman Road, Sonates, and the dance studio there. I get Nancy Gantz, they share parking, so they have an agreement that was approved by a previous director to do that. So that's an option, and maybe that doesn't give them all 7, maybe the third option is to buy their way out of some spaces. So again, what they're proposing in the RD rezoning is some combination of on-site, shared, and perhaps buy their way out of some spaces if need be.
An agreement like that has to be a filed agreement with the city, though.
Yeah, we have to approve it per the standards in the code, correct?
At the staff level.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question on, Heather, on going from central business district to a redevelopment district. Does that change anything with the 500-foot requirement?
That's one of the things they're proposing, yes. Since this location is closer than 500 feet from an existing drinking establishment, which would be Mango's, it's just under 500 feet. That's something that's been written into the rezoning application to kind of waive themselves out of that requirement. So again, it's just under the 500 feet.
Do you recall if we've done that before?
Yes, it's been done with the Metropolitan building. I think that was 2009, maybe earlier than that. The bar that's downstairs on the first floor of the Metropolitan is closer than 500 feet to the bar that's across the street. That was part of their rezoning application as well. It's Ritz and Wine Bar directly across the street. Close though.
Other questions from Ms. Allen? Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll now open the public hearing. Madam Vice Chair, do we have speaker cards?
David Smith?
Hello,
Please raise your right hand.
David Smith, 130 Fifth Avenue North. Could you show that location map up again, please? Sure.
Sir,
That one?
So,
David,
Smith.
raise your right hand.
pardon me?
He's squared in.
do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, that's us right there, 124. At 123 is residential, 129 is residential, and of course you got the bigger, that's residential. My concern is about crime. And it's about density bar. It's not about this bar. I like Scott, everybody likes Scott. He's been through a hard time, hardships. But that's not one of your criteria for approving this or not. It's a non-conforming use. I want to just read a little bit about non-conformities. Within the provisions established by the LDC, there exists uses of land structures and lots that were lawfully established before the LDC was adopted or amended, that do not now conform with the terms and requirements of the LDC. The purpose of and intent of this article is to regulate and limit the continued existence of these uses that do not conform with the provisions of the LDC. Is an intent to permit these non-conformities to continue until they are removed, but to not encourage their survival. The provisions of this article are designed to curtail substantial investment in non-conformities to preserve the integrity of the LDC and the comp plan. The problem that we have is so many bars in such a small space. Can I approach to hand you something?
Actually, please give it to the clerk.
This shows all the bars downtown within 500 feet of other bars. Basically, they're all non-conforming uses. I've also got a thing from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And it says it's called Using Public Health and Community Partnerships to Reduce Density of Alcohol Outlets. According to this document, Numerous studies have found significant relationship between alcohol outlet density and alcohol consumption and alcohol-related harms. Examples of such findings are, in Los Angeles County, researchers estimated that every additional alcohol outlet was associated with 3.4 additional violent incidents per year. In Cleveland, researchers estimated that every additional bar added to a city block resulted in 3 to 4 more crimes being committed on that block per year. In New Orleans, researchers predicted that a 10% increase in the density of outlets selling alcohol would increase homicide rates by 2.4%.
Mr. Smith, would you please wind it up? You have 3 minutes.
This is quasi-judicial. Ma'am?
I'm going to let Mr. Polk lead. Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
no,
it's not yet, 3 minutes is up. Same 3 minutes.
Is this quasi-judicial?
yes.
Then I have unlimited time. And I can cross-examine witnesses.
Well, in any case, sir, if you could be as brief
I'll
as
speed it
possible.
up.
Thank you.
So I'll go to the end. This is the criteria that's supposed to be used in this matter. After the close of public hearings or hearings, whichever is appropriate, the city council and you, this is also for the planning commission, shall consider the adoption of an ordinance enacting the proposed amendment. However, in no event shall an amendment be approved which will result in an adverse community change in which the proposed development is located. And I say that increased crime would be an adverse condition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other speaker reports, Madam Vice Chair?
Matt? I can't say your last name.
Weingert.
Okay. Weingart?
W.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Please state your name and your address.
Matt Weingert, 525 Margaret Street, Neptune Beach, Florida, 42266. I appreciate the board's time. I'm kind of a rambler, so I'm going to try to stay focused here. A little bit about me. I have a company that does inventory management and consulting for restaurants and hospitality establishments. I've been doing that here since 2010. I was GM of a restaurant after college and got a master's in accounting, short story long. Ended up franchising this company here in 2010. Over the last 12 years, I've worked with probably 150 different bar, restaurant, hospitality business owners, different management groups, single proprietors, corporate entities, everywhere in between. Scott has been a client and a friend of mine for over a decade now. We started with him with his first kind of venture and have kind of grown together. And like I said, he's more of a friend now than a business associate. Some things about him that differentiate himself. He's, like I said, I've dealt with a lot of owners. When they call me, we're managing their inventory, we're telling what their cost of goods sold are, making sure they're profitable to ensure long-term job security for their employees. When they call me normally, 99% of them, it's, this is what I need it now, I need it yesterday, when can I get it? With Scott, he's a different breed. He's creative, he's innovative. The very first thing he ever says to me is, how are you doing? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? He asked me questions about myself. And he did that from day one. That mentality, and excuse me, this isn't my forte, and I get a little bit passionate. So that mentality filters down through his entire organization, through his neighboring businesses. I've been, kind of grown with him, like I said, for the last 10 or 12 years. He's creative, he's innovative, he changes when things need to be changed, and I hear a lot about, we need this, and there's codes, and that's not my, forte at all, but if there's one thing I do know, it's that Scott's creative enough to adhere to requirements in order to establish this passion. This has been a passion of his for 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, he was talking to me about this, coming to the beach and that specific building and establishment and location for more than 5 years, for sure. And every time, I would ask him how it's going, there would be a hiccup, or there would be, more code stuff. And I get all that. And I'm not, but I've been a native to Jacksonville for 30 plus years. I've seen this place come and grow a lot. I've seen a lot of bad places pop up. I deal with a lot of clients that have negative morale within their staff. They don't care about accountability or do what they need to do to encourage a positive working environment for their team, for their clients, for their customers. They're not willing to listen to the neighbor next door about issues that may arise. That is not who this guy is. I'm telling you that for a fact. And I don't put my name out there for people. This is my first time ever standing at a podium and speaking in front of the board, and I do appreciate your time.
So I'm going to ask you to wind it up pretty quickly.
Okay. Just a few things. Like I said, he's creative, positive working environment. He's been excited about this project for years, and obviously everybody's read the email. He's had a long road, an unexpected one, and one that I'm thankful that he got through. And as a Jacks Beach resident, Neptune Beach resident for 30 years, I can guarantee you that this will not add homicide. This will not add. If anything, he will clean up that area with positive synergy between businesses, between employees, between customers, and creating an environment where people want to go and feel safe, rather than, I don't drive down here anymore between 10 and 2, down this first street, all this strip of ours. And I see you want me to wind it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate your time, and I can ramble all day about this, and happy to answer any questions. Would you like me to sit down, sir?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you guys for your comment.
Other speaker cards?
Frank Frazier?
I'm sorry?
Frank Frazier?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and your address.
Frank Frazier, 525 3rd Street North, Beer Pong Contest. The reason that I'm here, currently I'm positive towards redevelopment, positive towards things getting, taken care of. Another bar is another bar at Jacks Beach. There's a lot of them. My concern is the traffic flow. The rezoning. If it was a full bar, we need 60 spaces. If it's what it is now, we need 14 spaces. Being at Pier Point when there's festivals going on, things like that, it's just a nightmare, everyone coming in and out of the parking lot. I guess we'll need to police that better and tow cars. But a lot of the current traffic enters out of 4th and 5th Street. 4th because you can turn left, 5th because you can turn left, Beach Boulevard because you can turn left. The other streets between here and there, they have the median in there so you can't. There's many times, and I've mentioned this to the police, I've gone to the police department, mentioned it to several different policemen. The noise there is outrageous. Guys my age or older, I don't know why, but they have to get on their motorcycles, on a motorcycle, rev it to the max at 12:30, 1 o'clock at night, tear off down 3rd Street. They're going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Cars are taking off, spinning tires, almost on a nightly thing. So my only concern is if we do open up this new place, it's been 500 feet, and I apologize, I left my notes at home. Obviously, the 500 feet isn't a mandatory thing because it's been around. I'm just concerned that the noise level, based on the traffic, when you go to Atlantic Beach, there's not cars, there's not bikes going crazy. Down in Daytona, I was there a week and a half ago for Biketoberfest, when the guys were revving their bikes like idiots, policemen pulled them over. Here in Jacks Beach, we can do anything as far as sound, noise, cars, and it's, that's my concern. I'd like to, if we're going to do this, there needs to be more policemen around that area, maybe sitting there in the Pier Park parking lot or the Graffiti Burger parking lot and taken care of. I've seen people, I was standing in the corner of 2nd and 4th, and motorcycles came by, revving their engines, took off like crazy. I said something to the police, and they just told me to mind my own business. So, again, it's not a priority here in Jacks Beach and other counties and other cities, as far as Atlantic Beach, where they have a lot of traffic. They're taking care of the situation, and if we do some more development, I just like the situation to be taken care of as far as noise and things like that. People are gonna find places to park. I mean, the rezoning brings you from 60 to 12 or something like that. People are gonna find somewhere to park, but it's just when they're leaving, the noise is gonna be loud, and I'd like that to be addressed also in a different manner, I guess, to the realm. I got 2 seconds left.
Thank you. Tony Morgan.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address.
My name is Anthony Morgan, and I live on 13045 South Lake Road, Jacksonville. Good evening. Thank you for your time. Good to spend this time with you guys. I started a small business, Crystal Clean, with my brother on 2nd Avenue North about 20 years ago. And we were a pressure washing and cleaning company, so kind of got my roots in the company here in Jacks Beach. One thing I don't understand about this particular issue with Scott is he bought this as a bar, and the place has always been, a drinking establishment, and he received a permit from the city of Jacks Beach for that activity. And because of delays in construction and delays in COVID, it didn't get done in exactly the right time, but that was a pretty extenuating circumstance. One thing I would like to speak about that Scott never talks about, but he's had very severe health issues. He did briefly allude to that in his talk about going to Mayo, but for a period of time, long periods of time, months at a time, he's had Lyme's disease, he's had mercury poisoning, he's had Crohn's disease, he has severe back pain, and so Scott would often sleep 20, 21, 22 hours a day while he's trying to run businesses that employ 100 people and run them in a meaningful way. It's pretty remarkable what this guy has done with 2 to 3 to 4 hours of waking time in a day. And the fact that during this deadline when it passed, Scott was in one of those periods, he was at Mayo. They finally took care of the issue, but it was 2 months of that, and that led significantly to delays in time and him being able to be functional and get out and get paperwork done and manage the people that were underneath him. And he already spoke to the thing of the COVID shutdown, but having to lay off and then re-employ 100 people was extremely time consuming. And so some of these technicalities that perhaps he missed, a deadline by 2 or 3 days, I'm not sure why we would keep operation him from doing an operation. So it'd be nice if you guys would just consider that while you are thinking about this issue, that both the health issues and the COVID shutdown that were kind of unprecedented things that he had to deal with. And speaking to how he runs a business, I don't know if you've been to his other places, but 30 seconds. If you've been to the Loft, the Garage, the Road, they are community establishments. He provides, it's always been his heart, I've known him for 20 years since he moved here, it's always been his heart, even in his other establishments, to provide safe, comfortable, happy places to build community, and he's done that in Riverside. He's done a really good job of it, and I think he'll continue to do good here in Jacks Beach as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? You can speak to us now and then fill out a speaker card. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Ms. Ireland, can I suggest that you perhaps put the proposed conditions back up?
Sure, and Madam Chair, if I may, if you guys are going to consider any of these conditions, I would suggest kind of handle them one at a time and kind of roll them into the final motion, if you will, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you guys might have.
Well, can I ask just the question about the extension of time as a kind of practical matter, the city of Jacksonville was extending permit timing, but the city of Jacksonville Beach was not. I just wanted clarification that that was correct.
I'm not sure. So we had COVID extensions of certain things that were available to us through the state of Florida. So they were executive orders made by the governor that allowed extension of certain things. And, you know, honestly, the predicament that Mr. McAllister finds himself in is unfortunate. I can assure you guys that my staff and myself, we looked for every possible avenue to try to, you know, make this work for him. But, you know, there were expirations on permits that did get extended through COVID, but at some point that ended. And he just found himself in one of those windows where the permit expired, the extensions all expired, and there was really no avenue for us to explore to allow those to continue. We explored all of our options to assist him to continue the project forward. So this rezoning was kind of a group effort, if you will, just putting heads together to see how he could move forward. Yes, it is technically a non-conforming use, but drinking establishments are allowed as a permitted, a conditional use in the central business district. This one just predates the code, so it never did receive conditional use approval because it predated that requirement in our code, as do many of our bars downtown.
Thank you.
Typically, when we see a project, we know how many parking spots they have. They show us like, here, they're gonna be here, there's 4 or 5 here.
Mhm.
This, I'm a little confused as, especially the last one, the number 6, the points that you just had up.
Sure, so what this is showing that there's 6 gravel parking spaces
Yeah.
and then the one paved ADA space. So there's 7 now, but the ADA space will be paved. So this is their proposed site plan showing 6 gravel and then the one paved ADA.
And then the proposed was to remove the patio outside and put more parking there, and that's to eliminate having to do the office/bar.
No, go to that slide. So number 6 is just a staff proposed condition. The applicant wants to keep, the applicant wants to keep the bar.
Yeah,
So
I
again,
get that.
just a suggestion from staff, if there were concerns about noise from an outdoor bar, and
I see.
potentially
Okay.
kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will, if there's concerns about noise, but also the potential to possibly add additional parking. And getting rid of that also lowers the parking requirement.
I
But
see.
the
I
applicant would like
understand.
to maintain that outdoor deck. Yes, sir. Your question?
You answered it.
Okay.
Well, just a clarification, so if the deck were used, would the parking requirement be met on site?
I mean, they don't meet the parking requirement now with all the uses and the deck. They have about half on site. They need about 7 more spaces. So I can't say whether 7 can exactly fit back
That was
here.
my
I haven't
question.
looked, I haven't scaled it out to see exactly how many could fit and where exactly they would go. I know the dumpster enclosure is new, so certainly we wouldn't recommend relocating that. So it'd have to work within the confines of where that's located now. So again, just a suggestion.
So you need a 22-foot wide
And
two-way
so
driveway to
the
get
public
there.
hearing is actually closed right now. So typically, don't they show us the other parking spots though, typically, like on the plan? Like you said, like we don't know where these parking spots are. Are we to approve it and then he figures out where those parking spots are later?
Basically, yes. So these are the 7 spots these are actually on the property. The 7 that he's short
Yeah.
would have to be either found an adjacent property owner through a
I
shared
see.
parking
Okay.
agreement, or again, by the way out of parking.
Okay.
And I had said at the CRA meeting, maybe $25,000 a space. We haven't actually looked to see what that would cost. That's just an average. There's some blocks that might be $15,000. On the Ocean is probably close to 40 now per parking space. So we'd have to do an analysis to see if you were to take advantage of that, how much per space it would be.
Okay, well, if I can suggest if we could go back to the proposed conditions, how do commissioners feel about them? Any concerns about number 1?
Seems to make sense, since all the other ones follow that.
New session. Number 2?
I understand that he wants less, but if he wants the amount of parking that, I mean, you only have so much parking, so either have that or don't have that.
The question is, do we agree with number 2? I do.
I agree with all of that.
Okay, well, just bear with me and let's just go through them one by one, just to make sure we're not missing anything. Item 3. So that's kind of the issue about how, I presume that the word provided is in quotes because it's going to be provided in one of several.
Deck or purchase?
Yes, in some, yeah, the parking would be provided in some capacity. Again, we already know there's 7 on the
Deck or
site.
buyout.
It's finding the other 7, whether it's off-site through agreement or purchase.
So no questions on that. Number 4.
So you did say you confirmed that that's not, it can't be shared bathrooms.
Right, I
Same
confirmed that
requirement.
with the building official today, yeah. We had talked about it previously, but I wanted to make certain. And again, I think Mr. McAllister mentioned maybe having some flexibility with the other retail or tenant spaces. They're proposing an office and a retail space. You know, to do that with 200 square feet would be difficult, not impossible, but you know, with 2 points of egress, ADA bathroom, all the access you have to have would be challenging. I know he kind of threw out the idea of having some flexibility between the 2 spaces, maybe one's 300, maybe one's 700, so that's certainly something I think staff could get behind. Just wanted to put that out there. And again, I don't think that, again, we need to be married to the actual location of these. If they don't work, the use is still allowed. Just like any shopping center, the restaurant can kind of go anywhere, if that makes sense. Just wanted to clarify that we support kind of that shift.
Well, do any commissioners have any thoughts about condition number 2 and whether it should be specifically, so I'm reading that to say 500 square feet of office and 500 square feet of retail.
Yeah, that's what we were suggesting.
So is there any interest in?
My general,
As well as long as it doesn't exceed, it's 2 uses if it doesn't exceed 1,000?
my general concern is that the other uses are being considered specifically for parking, and what I heard is that it's financially prohibitive to not do it, right? So 200 to 250 square feet doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of, that's not a shopping center in my mind. Okay, I get what we can call definitions and everything, but they seem pretty small for it to be an actual mixed use.
Yeah, and just also, I'll add, there is no minimum tenant size for commercial, if you will. It's really more what will work with the requirements of building and fire code.
But my question was as to flexibility in the overall,
I'm just not
What
sure
that is
how we would word
I thought Heather just mentioned that, but she
I
said
mean,
we could work for 300.
what I heard was potentially a overarching, like the 2 shall encompass this total square footage. And,
Yeah, it could be a not to exceed amount, so the retail and office space, a not to exceed amount of 1,000, or, I'm sorry, a minimum of 1,000 square feet.
Right,
That could be.
a minimum, not
minimum,
to exceed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A minimum aggregate square footage of the retail and office of 1,000 square feet. That way there'd be some flexibility. It makes more sense to put more over here and less over there and still meet the requirements.
And that sounds like a decent compromise. My concern is still there that you have one that's 800 and one that's 200, right? So I guess it depends. Somebody find a use for it, it's fine. It just seems really small.
okay?
Well, since we're beating this to death, I want to ask this question. Where's the, and this isn't for the proponent, this is for Heather. Where did you feel the commercial reality was for the proponent to divide the space? Was it a very large, as large as you could get retail and as small as you could get office?
As far as what they were proposing,
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was just the minimum size they thought would be feasible.
So we're talking about 1,000 feet, right? 1,000 square feet. So it could be 800 retail and 200 office, or could anything in between.
I would say, yeah,
Okay.
anything or anything.
Yeah. And the commercial reality would push it towards the retail.
Yeah,
Right.
Possibly. Again, it depends on the use and how they can divvy up the space, I would imagine. I haven't been inside the building, so I don't see what limitations or
Mhm.
roadblocks they might have with carving out some space for those two uses.
Well, they got bathrooms,
Yep, that's a
Yeah,
big one.
that's a carve out.
ADA bathrooms, correct.
but they're looking for parking. So they gotta do it.
And, I'll add to that you can imagine that these retail and office uses, they're not gonna be open at the same time. You essentially are gonna have uses on site sharing the parking.
Yeah, which makes sense, because the
That's-
building's occupied. Yeah, thank you.
Well, you could do some comment if folks are in favor of that, conditional use, you could do a combination of both too and have it be, minimum of 1,000 combined, with a minimum of 300 per, I would recommend doing that, so there's not a closet in there, and 950, since Heather said herself, there wasn't necessarily a minimum. I would state some minimum of 300 per use with a minimum of 1,000 of the two combined. Something to that effect, whatever that lower number is.
Then you just specify 300. Because if it's a minimum of 1,000 and you specify 300, then you only have 700 left.
Well, it's 1,000 minimum though. So there you go.
Right. Yeah, they could go bigger,
Yeah.
if that's, meets their business requirement.
Okay. I think we discussed item 4. So item 5, the ADA accessible parking space.
Great.
And item 6.
I don't agree with that one, only because let them figure out where the parking is. Like, if they want to put it on the outdoor bar deck, then let them. If they don't, then they'll have to find somewhere else.
Remind us, Heather, what was the redevelopment recommendation on that one?
They recommended to not move forward with number 6, yeah. But they added a recommendation to pave the gravel parking. So get rid of number 6, added paved parking instead of gravel. And again, staff supports that. We don't object to either them removing number 6 or adding paved parking.
And the planning department has no position on gravel versus paved.
I mean, I think Public Works probably has a position on gravel, and they're not a huge fan, because it does go everywhere, and it has to be cleaned up out of the streets, so particularly in a downtown area that sees a little heavier traffic, as was mentioned. But again, that's why commercial parking is required to be paved, because gravel is sometimes difficult to contend with.
During your development meetings, Ms. Ireland, did you hear from the proponent what the economic impact of removing the deck would have on their proposal?
No, I don't have that level of detail.
Okay. Thank you.
We have the example of our sister body, and they support it. And we talked about each of the conditions.
Through the chair, just procedurally, if it would be helpful. Council did something similar with another recent proposal, and they basically made an overlying motion to either approve or not. In this case was approve, and then they amended that motion with votes on each condition, so it was very clear, yes, we want this one, no, we don't want that one. It seemed to work pretty well, and it was very obvious what conditions ended up in the motion.
How do you guys feel about that?
Sounds clean.
Okay, condition by condition. Okay, so overall, we need a motion to approve, to then be followed by more specific motions related to each of the conditions. Okay.
Basically, they would amend the initial motion.
Motion to approve with amendments.
And is that the correct language?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Okay. Do you have a second? So what we have before us is the staff recommendation for these conditions. We talked about the potential for some changes or not to the conditions. I suggest a motion that identifies what, if any, where we support them and where we would want changes if in fact that's the case. So does anyone have that sort of motion?
I can try it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
the motion would be to approve the conditional use to change the ownership in the drinking establishment. The second would be to keep a minimum square footage of 1,000 feet for the office and retail component combined. Keep the parking to be provided prior to a certificate of use being issued. And that's, as Ms. Ireland has repeated multiple times, that's on-site or purchased owner's choice. No internal access between the uses, and I understood that to be a state requirement, and it was a building department requirement, so that's absolutely a keeper. One paved ADA is a keeper, and consider requiring the removal of the entire outdoor bar deck to be replaced with additional on-site parking. I don't know what that means as far as a motion, because, yeah, I consider it, but I'm not going to do it. So I can't answer that one. If somebody could help me, then we have a complete motion.
I think what it sounds like is the motion is to approve with the staff proposed conditions of approval, modifying number 2 to read that there should be a minimum of 1,000 feet mixed use, to be dividing that up to be determined at building, I guess, or from.
Right, you have to have both office and retail to make it
Correct.
mixed use.
And then dropping number 6. So the staff motion to approve with the staff proposed conditions for approval, amending number 2 to read a minimum of 1,000 square feet combined, and not number 6.
Well, it's your motion now, so I'll second it.
Are we all clear?
Thanks for the help.
Are we clear? Everyone feels comfortable, they understand what we're voting on. Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Colleen White,
Yes.
Justin Lehrman,
Yes.
David Dahl,
Yes.
Greg Sutton,
No.
Markham Wine.
Yes. So the motion has been approved.
You don't have to stay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Our next item of new business, please. You guys ready for the last one?
And so, real quick, I think we should just vote on this one right now. I should start the roll call.
I'll be brief. And for the last application, it will go to council on November 21st and December 5th with your recommendation. Okay, last one. PC 2422 is a land development code text amendment. Council received some concern from residents that their residential property backs up to commercial. They were interested in getting an 8-foot tall solid fence, which the code does not allow. We had a briefing on it with council to kind of discuss some ins and outs of the fence code and what other cities require. Staff did recommend that council waits until we update the whole land development code instead of just making this one change, because we haven't even dove into that section of the code yet to see what other issues or changes we want to make, but they did want us to go ahead and move forward. So what this proposed change is, it's really fairly simple. It would change the land development code section 406 to allow has side and rear yard fences on single-family property that are immediately adjacent to a commercial or industrial use, have an 8-foot tall solid fence. Right now, if you want an 8-foot fence, the top 2 feet have to be 25% open. So this would allow you to have the 8-foot solid fence, and even when the property is separated by an alleyway. So pretty straightforward. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have on that.
I've got a question. The way this reads, Heather, side and I think and is key there, rear yard fences on single-family residential uses that are immediately adjacent. So that could be interpreted as I'm immediately adjacent to a commercial use over on this side, and I therefore can fully enclose 8 foot all the way around.
I see what you're saying. So are you
So I think this
suggesting to
so
clarify that?
unless that's the intent, I think the intent is the side that's adjacent.
Correct.
and Property,
Yeah.
so I think it needs to be clarified to
Okay.
read.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yes, and it is intended that if it's their side yard that's adjacent, then that would give me
Just
8
that
feet.
side
And
yard.
the rear yard if that's adjacent, yes, just not the front, but either side or rear. So we can clarify that.
A question to the chair. Why would it be negative to allow, I see like over on Penman where there are alleyways in the back, and you may have a nuisance use on one side and you need an 8 foot, but you can't do it in the back, it bounces off the alley and comes back in. You're no better off than you were without it, because the sound doesn't travel in straight ways, it emanates in a circle.
Yeah, and
So it can bounce. I think if somebody wants an 8 foot fence, they ought to be able to have one. That's my opinion.
And again, anyone can have an 8-foot fence now, side or rear yard, as long as that top 2 foot is open. So you see these fences that are solid up to that 6 foot, and then it's kind of a lattice work above that. So this would allow solid, again, on any side that's adjacent to a commercial or industrial use to kind of help with that
But only
privacy.
adjacent.
And yeah, I'm okay with that. We can clarify that.
So would it read something like side and or rear yard fences on single-family residential uses on property lines that are immediately adjacent to an established commercial?
Yeah, we can clarify that on the side that is immediately adjacent.
I mean, it could be two, maybe.
It
which
could
would
be,
really
yeah, on
unfortunate.
corner lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure we have any, but.
So I don't have a problem with this. I agree that it probably needs to be clarified a little. Just heads up, this is gonna result in a lot of discussion at land development code, because you're opening the doorway for people to say, well, if it's next to a divided road, right, I want an 8 foot
Well,
fence.
you're absolutely right, which is one of the reasons we wanted to wait, because we know there's other properties where they could benefit from something like this if you back up to other boulevards, for example, or A1A.
Exactly.
This is a kind of an isolated request. We're obviously still gonna take a look at this when we get to this section of the land development code, so we'll be making other changes, I'm sure.
Can you just, why does this have to be done now, prior to?
The council, so the code basically says that the planning commission, city council, or staff can initiate a change to the land development code, so they requested that we initiate this, so here we are.
Is this a recommendation to them, or if we decline this, but because we think, we support your idea of waiting until we do the whole thing, does it die?
No, I would prefer you guys make a recommendation to move this forward to council, since they did request we make this change. Again, staff does not object to this change, we just would have preferred to wait, but again, it's such a minor change, we don't object to it.
You didn't answer my question. Can they, if we were to decline this, can they approve it?
Yes, if you guys were to recommend
Deny.
disapproval of it, then it moves forward to them
Yeah.
as a recommendation.
This is not quasi judicial, it's a
This
recommendation
is
to the
legislative.
council.
Yes, sir.
Further discussion? Do we have a
Motion to approve.
Second.
roll call vote?
Justin Lehman,
Yes.
David Dahl,
Yes.
Greg Sutton,
Yes.
Colleen White,
Yes.
Margot Moore.
Yes.
Thank you.
Planning Department report, thank you. Ms. Allen?
Just a reminder that your joint LDC and comp plan meeting is this Thursday at 6 o'clock. And we will have the CRA participating because their meeting got canceled last week for unforeseen circumstances, so they'll also be part of this discussion.
Is it 8 o'clock?
6 o'clock. 6 to 8.
On the 27th, is it?
Yeah, on Thursday. Doing it right here.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Just an order of business, I'd like to make a motion for consideration that the December 26th Planning Commission meeting be canceled.
Second.
Madam Clerk, did you get which of the many folks seconded that? You're good? Okay. We need a roll call, please.
David Dahl,
Yes.
Greg Sutton,
Yes.
Colleen White,
Yes.
Justin Lehman,
Yes.
Margaret Moore.
Yes.
Good call.
With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.